Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Weekly Roundtable. I'm Mike Marshall, one of the co-founders of the Liberty First Foundation. Unfortunately, Frank will not be with us tonight. He's got other obligations. With me tonight, I have Michael Vasquez from No Sound Bites Allowed, Dragon of the state of New York, political commentary, and politician's worst nightmare. Also with us, joining us tonight, is Dal Graham. Dal, you'll find him on various places around the internet doing his own brand of political commentary and
mostly trolling on X. So that's my battleground.
So, guys, the inauguration went off pretty much without a hitch. Trump has warmed up the executive order pen.
Oh, he knocked it out of the park. I mean, within 36 hours, he had already fulfilled about at least 25%, if not 50% of all the promises that he made on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to the low-hanging ones, like Russ Ulbricht and all those.
Sorry, I got just my light. It's too dark. No sound from you, Michael. So, but there's also been a lot of talk about, especially prior to the inauguration, about how people were wanting Biden to step in and basically claim that Trump was ineligible to take office based on the 14th Amendment.
Oh, yeah. That was Section 3, right? Is the one that they keep trying to quote.
Yeah. And we've had that discussion multiple times on here.
Yeah.
Because the big thing that they are neglecting when they are claiming that Trump's ineligible due to Section 3 is Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which is the due process article of the 14th Amendment, which Correct. Requires before anything is taken from somebody, there must be due process. That would include taking eligibility away from somebody being able to run for elected office.
Correct.
Regardless of what they are accused of, until the due process part is met, then the rest of it doesn't apply. And that's one of the things, one of the big things that a lot of people are neglecting. There's a reason why the due process part was put in the first article and not put after the insurrection part.
Right.
It was put in there because due process is the part of the 14th Amendment that must be met before any other conditions apply.
Which, by the way, also protects those that have been pardoned from the January 6th event. So the due process protects them as well. And the fact that they're violating the 14th Amendment to keep certain prisoners in prison, even though they've had their sentences commuted or pardoned, is a violation of the law.
Yeah, it is. It is. It absolutely
is. We say it all the time, on this channel and elsewhere. You can make a lot of different things legal. Doesn't necessarily make them lawful. And right now, the previous administration and the bureaucracies that have stemmed from them are acting legally, maybe, but they're acting unlawfully. And the law trumps legality. Because legally is a process. Law is what we live by.
Right. Welcome, Anya. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anya.
Here's the real thing on that. Okay. And we are going to discuss this a little bit more because I want people to understand what a presidential pardon is and what it actually means.
Right.
Okay. And let's go to the Constitution for this. Because this is actually pretty important because both presidents, within a couple of days of each other, have issued blanket pardons.
Yep.
So, in order for us to really understand what's going on, we need to educate ourselves. Okay. I'm getting to it here. So I'm going to the Constitution because that is the part that we need to turn to. Okay, the Constitution is the law of the land. The Constitution is what set up our government at the federal level. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this here so we can all read along. Okay. So right here. Okay. It says, it's the last line of the first clause of Section 2 of Article 2. Okay. He says, she shall have the pardon to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Okay. It doesn't get any clearer than that. The president has the ability to pardon absolutely anyone for any offense that is a result of federal charges.
Right.
Okay. Or potential federal charges, as Biden did. I do have a little bit of an issue with that, with him preemptively pardoning various people that were in his administration. Because if he knew that there was malfeasance going on, and for him to be able to just unilaterally pardon them, that is an issue. I still think that they should be allowed to be investigated, and if there was wrongdoing and so forth, for that to be exposed.
Well, that's the first problem. This is when you issue a unilateral pardon without any underlying charges or investigation. The implication is this is you're evading the law. You're abusing the law because you're not allowing that investigation. God knows how many individuals have committed wrongdoing and should be punished that are associated with the underlying crime, or perhaps from the investigation, whether or not that individual that they start with is guilty or not. So he's actually aiding and abetting crimes potentially by issuing
in a
that
sense.
pardon.
And if there was criminal acts that were done as members of his administration that he pardoned them for, then that isn't a cover. Okay, so I do have some issues with that, with pardoning somebody prior to them actually being charged and convicted of an offense. Okay, that I do have problems with.
Everyone should. Again, there's the purpose of a pardon is when there has been a miscarriage of justice to an extreme level.
Yeah.
That there has been a failure in the system, and it's meant to correct that oversight, that bias, that whatever went wrong, it is meant to do that. And Biden, in the manner in which he has gone about using his pardons, not just pardoning the individual crimes, say for Hunter Biden, but also a decade-long time period to protect his family and friends with a decade-long time period. Dr. Fauci with a decade-long, more than decade-long time period. He is effectively subverting our system. he is abusing. Obviously, it's beyond overreach, the amount of abuse he is doing. Everyone in the nation, Democrats or no matter what your political preference, you can be a Democrat, progressive, you can be a socialist for all I care. This is not just abusing the intent of the law. This is the word of the law. This is the intent of the law. This is the function of the law. And we should all be very, very upset about that. And yet we hear people saying, well, Donald Trump, he's pardoning the J6 individuals. And here's the thing. There are actual crimes that have been accused of them. Many of them are still waiting for trial. Many of them have pled out because of the cost. Some of them have been convicted. And those individuals who have been convicted, this is the amount of time they have been given, extremely beyond anything that is in the norm for the level of charge they have received. The amount of time they had to wait to get into a trial extremely exceeds the norm for anyone to get to trial in the first place. The cost is extremely more than what is normal. We are seeing extremities. So by going apples to apples, you have Trump, who is following the nature, the intent, and the example of pardons throughout history. Biden is the exact opposite. He is abusing it, doing things that no one has done. As far as more, no one's ever done it in this manner, just to protect his friends and family and political donors. It should be that clear for everyone. And people should be happy. Trump's doing it right. And we no longer have Biden, who is more than willing to do things wrong and politically.
And here's another thing. Okay, I wouldn't have so much trouble with Biden's pardons if they were for specific offenses. Okay, right. But these are complete blanket pardons, basically giving them complete and utter immunity for that period of time. And that in and of itself is wrong.
I know I'm late and sorry guys. I was having some computer issues.
No worries.
Good to see you. Sorry, it's been a while since I've been on live with you, but that's why I wanted to be here tonight. I do know that I missed some of this, but everything that I am reading about Article 2, Section 2 states in that portion that you have to have been convicted of a crime. So how can he get away with making a blanket pardon with no crime?
No, you don't. Okay, there's nothing in the Constitution that actually says that you have to be convicted of a crime. Okay, so what it actually says, and I'm putting it back up here, and he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Okay, there's nothing that says that they actually have to be convicted. Okay, if they've been accused of an offense against the United States, then yeah, he can pardon them for that offense. But the problem with Biden's blanket pardons that he put in place is there have been no accusations made. With the exception of Hunter Biden, there were 2 accusations. Now, if Biden would pardon Hunter Biden for those 2 specific crimes and just those 2 specific crimes, he'd be perfectly within his powers to do so. Going beyond that, he has gone beyond the office of the presidency.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that people aren't realizing too, and I've heard a few prosecutors come out and make some statements. I've heard some people in Congress come out and make some statements that just because you have a pardon doesn't mean you don't have to testify. And that if we call you in front of Congress and you testify and you lie, your pardon is null and void. And it's like, and to me, that would be like a prosecutor giving somebody immunity.
I got to step away for a little bit.
Yeah.
I will be back.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 parts to that. So, one, perjury is a separate offense, which would not be covered by a pardon because it's a new offense, separate outside the scope of what the pardon, because the pardon is supposed to be to the offense you committed. So, in the case of Hunter and his gun charge, well, that's in reference to the pardons to the gun charge specifically. That's an offense. He's specifically pardoned for that offense. If he, after the fact, perjures himself, not covered. Separately, there's also the fact that, so that was the first part of it. And second thing is, if anyone who's been under these investigations got charged, if they are brought to a courtroom and they're asked a specific question pertaining to that pardon, that offense that they have committed or were charged with, they must answer the question because they no longer have a Fifth Amendment right because they cannot incriminate themselves. Since there is no, the whole point of the Fifth Amendment is not to incriminate yourself.
Right.
You have that right. You don't have to incriminate yourself. They can't incriminate themselves. Therefore, the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply, as that punishment, that penalty, can't be applied to them. So they must. And if they do not respond to a question in a courtroom that pertains to that pardon, they can be punished. Again, not for the initial pardoned offense, but for that, it would be contempt of court, obstruction of justice. There could be a couple of different charges that can be placed upon them.
Okay, I get it. Because like I said, I kind of, everything that I've been reading and learning and hearing and looking, like I said, I kind of attribute some of it to what immunity means. You know, when you go into the court of law and the prosecutor's giving you immunity, you can't lie, you can't take the fifth, you can't, you got to tell the truth.
Right.
But that's talking court of law. What happens when Congress calls them in?
Same thing.
See, that's where I wanted to go with it. I want people to understand. They go in front of Congress and they say, "Oh, I don't remember. I can't recall."
They say that to avoid perjury.
Yeah, as long as they're under oath. If it's an informal hearing where they don't take an oath to tell the whole truth and so on, then they can answer however they want.
Because I already know that a couple, some of the GOP have already come out and say these pardons mean nothing. We will call them in front of Congress.
Well, that works both ways. One, since there was no offense against several of the people, like Dr. Fauci is an example, or Biden's brother, there was no offense. Therefore, there is nothing to pardon. So you can't preempt, and that's the problem. It's the preemptive part. There's no one has done an investigation. There has been no offense. By the exact words of the Constitution, there's nothing to pardon because nothing has happened.
There have been investigations.
Well, no, they were looking at someone else. They didn't investigate Jim.
There were investigations by the GOP on Fauci and all the COVID stuff.
Without any determination. Yes. So there is no offense. He wasn't charged with anything. They said, okay, we believe, and again, the investigation is just the first part, but that's not an offense. That's an investigation.
You'd have investigation, you'd have discovery, and discovery goes deeper. Discovery goes deeper and is more public. So if they moved beyond just a cursory investigation and actually determined that there was a reason to go to discovery, then you would probably see more in terms of, actual accusations. The pardon doesn't stop them from going. Basically all the pardon does is keep them from going to discovery unless there's a real reason, a criminal reason to do so. And that the fact that the pardon exists, to most people would say, well, there's got to be something there. But how are you actually going to go and pursue it when you can't actually come to any sort of conviction on it because they've already been pardoned?
Well, it is. I mean,
okay. So with that, this is my question. He gets called Fauci. We're using Fauci here.
Mhm.
He gets
Okay.
called in front of Congress.
Mhm.
Congress brings up all the stuff that the GOP has brought to the public eye in the last 3 years, of all the inner memos, shutting down this talk or that talk, or believing the science when there was actually no science really there, like the 6 foot and the masks and all that. This is stuff that the GOP has proven. So he gets in front of Congress, they ask him the questions. Oh, I don't remember. I can't recall.
He's
I
again,
plead the fifth.
that is not a crime. That is actually, any lawyer will tell you, answer in that way. You cannot be held to perjury for saying I don't recall.
Right.
You cannot be held in
That
perjury.
is a valid defense.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Even-
number one, you can't prove that they don't recall.
And even if they do answer that, you know they're deflecting, because it's obvious he's deflecting because of the public information available. Even because of that, the only way you can't get him to force him to tell the truth, regardless of whether he's under the fifth or not.
Right.
That's the issue.
You'd have to
can't-
prove it.
You can't compel them to say the truth. Basically, what you would end up having is they would put him on the stand, so to speak, and pardon or no pardon, he would never incriminate himself with or without the Fifth Amendment. He would just try to avoid perjury, because that would be the only criminal offense that the pardon would not cover,
Okay.
because it would be a recent offense.
So
So what you'd have
at this point in time, the only way to get people like Fauci is for the states to bring up charges.
At this
Yes.
point, yes.
at this juncture, yes,
Yes, the
and
states.
it would have. It
And
would have.
that's the thing is these blanket pardons across the board only apply to federal charges. They do not apply to state or local charges.
Then I say we all get on the phones to our Republican governors and we tell them to talk to their AGs and bring up state charges on Dr. Fauci.
It can't just be Republicans. It has to be Democrats too. Because now, again, if you're only having one party and it's going in, it's the same kind of bias that we've heard from
I get
Trump.
that. I understand it. But you call your Democratic governor, they ain't going to do crap.
It's some.
If you have
You don't know that. Okay, there are some Democrats out that are serving that don't necessarily toe the full Democrat line.
or they
Right.
were afraid of
It's like there's
re-election.
some
I'll say it
Republicans out there
again
that
then.
don't
Get on
toe
the phone,
full
call your
Republican.
governor, get in touch with your AG, and have them bring state files against charges against Fauci. People need to be held accountable. We're tired of these people destroying our way of life in any means possible. Congress, I don't care who it is, and getting away with it every time.
No, I agree with you. That's the whole point of what we're seeing happening right now, which is why the Democrats are running scared right now, because we are seeing a very public supported change.
Here is a better solution on that. Okay,
Primary them out.
besides just trying to go after them, get them charged, and so forth and so on. Okay, start raising awareness of people to show how literally corrupt this blanket pardon is.
Right.
Okay, teach them that the Democrats aren't about them, they're about themselves, and they will do everything in their power to protect themselves and the elite. They don't do anything to protect the peons.
Somebody asked me today while I was at work. They asked me, how did I feel about the J6 pardon, the blanket pardon? And I said, well, let me ask you this: how do you feel about the blanket pardon that came from Biden? And he was like, well, I won't discuss it then. And I said, well, here's the thing. The reason I asked that question is because it's not about how I feel. I can take a look at what has happened to the people that were sentenced or were taken in for J6, and I can tell you which portions of the Constitution and the law they have had violated against them by our own government. You look at the way the pardons were used in the Biden's case, and you can't point to any reason within the Constitution what has been violated. There's nothing there. We know that there were shady dealings in the last 4 to 8 years because of the Democrats. But we have nothing to show for it. But now all of a sudden we have a blanket pardon. Whereas with J6 we have violations of due process, we have violations of property rights, we have violations of person rights, like individual rights. So the pardons for the J6, I feel, and I say as well that it's more demonstrably true that the pardon for J6 victims and hostages are more justified than the blanket pardons that were given out by the Biden administration.
Well, I
not
also
just-
bring up the fact, gee, you remember when all you guys said that you were so afraid that Donald Trump was going to pardon his family and how that wouldn't be appropriate, and how could he get away with doing that as a president? Well, Biden just turned around and did it. I don't hear you griping about it.
No, of course not. But there's another way to look at the J6, which maybe people who have a different political persuasion. Let's put it to them like this. They're saying, how do you feel about this? Okay. And let's compare J6 to the 2020 riots. And you can pick New York, you can go through all the different states, Minneapolis, you can go to New York City, wherever you want to. And as in New York State, New York City in particular, with the riots in Brooklyn, there were 6,000 people who were arrested for second-degree rioting, for destruction of property, for looting. These are the charges that were definitively they were caught in the act. There is evidence of this. No one denies they were in second-degree rioting, first-degree rioting, violence, destruction of property, looting. No one argues these things happened. So that's a fact.
Right.
Well, what about storming the White House?
Well, yeah. But those and all of those charges, as an example in New York, as one case, but there were at least 22 other cities that had similar situations. They all got wiped out. Those charges were just disappeared. They removed the charges, which is essentially the same thing as a pardon. They're gone. There's more justification and more legal precedent for what's happened with the J6 prisoners. And foundationally, every way you want to look at it, there's more precedence and more legal standing for what happened with the J6 prisoners than what we saw with the 2020 rioters.
Yeah.
If you can stand and if you can say that the 2020 rioters were justified, it was perfectly fine to wipe out their crimes or their accusations of crimes before they even got to trial, before any investigation could be put through, even though there is evidence, then you can't turn around and say, oh, but the J6 people should still be in jail. No, you can't. And I don't think anyone ever really thinks of it in that way. No one ever really has that. We're not supposed to remember what the government did more than 3 months ago. We're always supposed to be thinking about the
Jamal
news
character that pulled the fire alarm.
What's that?
What about the Jamal character that pulled the fire alarm?
Jamal
Bowden.
Bowman.
Yeah.
Jumani?
No, Jamal.
Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal Bowman.
Bowman, yeah. Yeah, and that's yet another case where we have videographic evidence. He eventually decided to admit his action, his crime. And intent is not a defense of the law. He said, I didn't know that the door, even though he had the sign that said "Don't open the door" in his hand.
No.
Video evidence.
It wasn't a door that he opened up.
Oh no,
He
sorry.
pulled an actual fire alarm.
He pulled the fire alarm. Yeah, because he said he was trying to open the door. Right. But he had the sign. Literally had the sign in his hands.
It literally says right on the button,
Yeah.
fire alarm.
Yes, I know. And
That's
there was
required by law.
Yeah, and there was a sign on the door that said, "Cannot use this doorway." That it's closed. He knew this. And again, what happened with him? Slap on the wrist. But I think most people will clearly remember the 2020 riots. It's something that's indelible.
Oh,
You've
those
got
were
the
peaceful
other,
protests.
Protests that shut down the House of Representatives. That was again a left-leaning protest that happened right around the same time as Jamal Bowen pulling the fire alarm.
Yeah, I have a big problem with that. But we're seeing a very clear, and this is why this is what happens when people get involved, when people vote. We're seeing a clear delineation, separation of what we've been told, the two tiers of justice, the way that Democrats are allowed and justified and backed up by the news media to do something, whereas everyone else is held to a different standard, a standard that is much higher and is almost impossible. And because we're noticing this, because people are saying this isn't fair, this isn't right, this isn't just, and that this has to change, now people need to go and vote.
I got another perfect example of that. I was watching the House today. They brought up, because the Senate sent it back to the House, the Lincoln, I have a hard time saying her first name, Lincoln Riley Act.
Lakin
Okay,
Riley.
thank you. And they give each, that you have the one main guy that stands up on each side, and he starts off giving his speech, and then they say, well, this person has this much time to talk, and they go back and forth that way. Every time the Republicans got up to talk, it was the fact that we have to protect our country from illegal criminals who are killing people, who are raping people, who are holding apartment complexes hostage, stealing. And every time they went back over to the Democrats, they talked about how Trump pardoned J6ers.
No, they have to change the story. They have notice this is part of the reason why they're saying so much about Elon. They're trying to make the big deal about Elon obviously waving to the crowd, and they have to turn it into he's evil. He's a evil 1930s German. But in fact, we have video of AOC, Obama, Elizabeth Warren, pretty much
show anybody doing that type of wave.
No, everyone. If you take enough photos and you do them fast enough, you have a speed camera, you can get almost any politician waving to almost any crowd and get that same image. So, and it was obviously, when we see the full video, we can see that he's waving to an audience. He's very exuberant and he's being very over the top in his movements. But that's not unlike what we've seen with anyone else. They are fishing for anything they can find to attack, to try and demonize Trump and to prevent both his nominees and many of his objectives from going through, because they know the public supports it. As I think it was the New York Times or it was the Washington Post put out this week, a poll that came out that on almost every one of the issues that we're now talking about, that Trump is actively changing the process and actually prosecuting, enforcing the law, the American public, like 61% on almost each of these issues, 61% of the American people want him to succeed. And Democrats have no way to they have no way to deal with that. They don't know what to do. So their only answer is we have to destroy the character of these individuals. We have to attack them personally. We have to change people's emotions so that they can maintain any power. And it's not working, and it shouldn't work.
Okay. So one of my favorite congresswomen, Rashida Tlaib, put out this blanket statement on the Laken Riley Act. It's shameful that the first bill of the new Congress will put a target on the back of millions of our neighbors and increase the militarization of our neighborhoods. This bill is a blatant violation of due process and will lead to the mandatory detention and deportation of people who are merely accused of a crime without even being convicted. It will separate families and lead to increased racial profiling. It will empower Trump to even further to unleash mass deportation on our communities. It's a shame that my colleagues are giving into racist fear-mongering at the first opportunity to pass legislation to scapegoat immigrants and fuel hate in our communities.
Yeah.
Again, what about the American people that you're
Okay.
to represent?
Well, here's my first thing. If you are not a naturalized citizen of the United States, the Constitution is not fully applicable to you. Okay?
Yeah.
If you are a visitor from another country, regardless of whether that's documented or undocumented, if you are a visitor from another country, your visa can be pulled at any time, regardless of cause.
But, but not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you. But the biggest issue that people continue to overlook is they broke our law coming into this
They've been
country
accused.
originally.
Mind you, she said accused. Okay, they haven't necessarily been convicted. They've been accused.
Well, they haven't been to a court, so no, they haven't been accused. They haven't been convicted. But yeah, the accusation, and there's physical evidence of it. Yeah. But I find that to be, that's in the case of illegal aliens that we have documentation on. They came in and then they filled in documents. Then they requested asylum. We can say pretty definitively they have violated the very first thing they did is violate.
When they cross the border without documentation, they violated the law, and that makes them criminal.
Yeah.
But this is regardless, okay, even if they are here legally and they violated the law, we as a nation have the authority to pull anyone's visa at any time for any reason.
Yeah.
Because we are allowing them to be here. Okay. They are a visitor in our home. And we have the right to demand that they leave whenever we choose.
Which is what Trump is doing. He's enforcing the law, which is the rescinding.
Okay, and that's what this Laken Riley bill is.
It's one of several bills.
It is a legislative process that enshrines that right.
Yes, and people should look at who voted for and who voted against. And now you know who's looking at your rights versus the rights of criminals. And people should vote accordingly. If the emphasis, like with Rashida Tlaib, if the emphasis is on criminals who have violated our laws to start with, and then in the case of the Laken Riley Act and a couple of other bills, the stipulation in the law is, and then those individuals commit further criminal acts, and in particular violent acts of violent criminal acts, then these individuals have been specifically pointed out for expedited deportation from the United States. How can you argue against that? She's going, well, it's racist. This is someone who not only broke the law to start with, but then added a violent crime on top of that. What are you talking about? I don't understand this. She's like, oh, well, they're going to be you. The only way you get in this list is you have to, in addition to the crime of entering America, you have to violently commit another crime. That's not about someone's race or some kind of prejudice. You have to commit another crime. So these are individuals who have qualified twice in violating some of our most important laws, like, murder, that you have to go. And yet we see these Democrats saying, no, that's not enough. I don't know what mountain of it's not even evidence. They're just making it insurmountable to do this. And we know why. And I think this is important to remind people. We know why they are doing this. We were told by Kamala Harris when she was interviewed by ABC News in Philadelphia, so people can look at that interview, and she made it very clear. Democrats want an open border so they can create a path to citizenship, which Biden himself was also trying to push through Congress and couldn't get it done. They're trying to get roughly 11 million illegal aliens as American citizens able to vote. And in addition to that, in several states like California, like New York, they tried to get illegal aliens to vote. Now, they claimed local elections, except the ballot isn't separated between local and federal and state. It's all the same form. And we know for a fact that in Oregon and in multiple states, that illegal aliens were given driver's licenses and were registered to vote. And in several cases where the DOJ was investigating, even under Merrick Garland, that there were illegal aliens that voted in 2016, 2020, and 2022. These things happen. So we know their plan, as described by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, was to get these individuals to eliminate or waive their past criminality, make them citizens on the presumption that they will be dependent on Democrats and keep them in power. This is about abuse of power in every single step. People need to step up and vote.
Well,
They're
and
not protecting you.
I think this could lead into a good next topic that was brought up in the chat room earlier regarding sanctuary cities and how the GOP is saying that they are going to arrest mayors and anybody else who stands in their way.
Well, according to the documentation, the DOJ, the announcement came out this afternoon. I did a short video on it shortly after it came out. The DOJ memo states, and it's gone out to every state attorney general. So all 50 states have this, and down the line from there. And it states clearly that any elected official who interrupts and interferes with the proper execution and enforcement of immigration law by federal authorities will be arrested and charged, because that is a crime. It's obstruction of justice. And they will be charged to the fullest extent of the law, regardless of their elected position. That means that we've heard from J.B. Pritzker, we've heard from Kathy Hochul, we've heard from Gavin Newsom, and Gretchen Whitmer, and they have all said that they will stand in the way of President Trump and the federal government, that they will maintain sanctuary state and sanctuary city statuses in their control, These are literally, so they're declaring their violation of the law. The AG should right now walk into the office of, well, if, as we know, Tom Holman is right now going throughout, ICE is going through the various cities and they're trying to arrest illegal aliens. If any illegal alien is hidden, delayed, or not handed over to ICE as they should be, if there's any interference whatsoever, the governor of those states should be arrested instantly and not charged with a crime and arrested and put into jail. It's that simple.
So
And
I
if you
have a
don't-
question for Michael to answer. Michael, where in
Yeah.
the Constitution does it say that a state and a city can be deemed themselves sanctuaries?
There isn't.
No, it's a crime.
But okay, I know we've discussed this many, many, many times on this show about federal authority on immigration. And you guys also know where I kind of stand on that. Okay. There is nothing in the Constitution that actually forbids states from allowing non-resident people in their jurisdictions. There's nothing. There is no federal authority constitutionally for them over immigration, over who's allowed in or not into this country, because that is actually pretty much a state deal. The only requirements in the Constitution, as far as that goes, is what the requirements are to becoming a naturalized citizen of the United States, and that's it on constitutionally as far as immigration goes.
Did you hear DACA got shut down yet again?
Yep.
Yet again? This is like the fourth time they have said DACA is unconstitutional.
And it is.
And it is.
Obama said so. Obama said so 20 times. Literally.
And he's
Documented
the one
20
that
times.
stated it.
Yeah. Before he ever said DACA 20 times as a
Okay.
constitutional scholar, he said DACA is illegal. Can't be done. I
DACA
stand
is
with that.
unconstitutional, okay, because the federal government does not have authority over immigration. Constitutionally, they do not have that authority.
So it's pretty straightforward, but I think it's, and we're going to see something else. I think it's important to mention. And I asked back in November, I was talking to a New York City Council member, and I asked them, what happens when Trump gets in and he follows up on his promise, as he is doing? Are they prepared for not only the illegal aliens, but here's the other part, and it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's about to happen very shortly. Trump is going to cut funding. Now, he's limited in how much he directly can cut, although agencies like HHS or DHS, several agencies that fall under the executive branch, he can control their budgets. But Congress would control the overall budget. But I would expect you're going to hear Trump say that these departments should cut their funding for illegal aliens and to these sanctuary cities. And he'll ask Congress to do the same thing on all federal funding to these sanctuary cities, these sanctuary states. They have no idea what to do. New York City, I can tell you, they have no idea what to do if Trump cuts their funding because they're a sanctuary city. New York State has no idea what they're going to do if Trump cuts their funding because it's a sanctuary state. As far as I know, same thing with California, Illinois, all of the bluer than blue progressive states. But this is going to happen. And I, for one, knowing that sanctuary cities, sanctuary states are illegal, knowing that they allow crimes, underlying crimes, to proliferate, they're helping to create a culture of criminal gangs, of abuses against people, of murder, drugs, smuggling, sexual abuse. They're allowing all of that to happen because they're a sanctuary state. I mean, the 8 Tajikistan ISIS members who entered the United States illegally and are on the known terrorist watch list, thus they got summarily deported after we found them after a year. Where did they go? California. Why? Sanctuary state. They were being hidden by the state of California from the proper authorities in the United States, which means that Gavin Newsom, governor, was literally helping to support terrorism in the United States by hiding those 8 known terrorists from the United States government and allowing them to stay in the United States, which was illegal. But no one wants to talk about that. So, yeah, I'm looking for them to arrest him.
I do want to talk about Ross Ulbricht. Alex, I can't pronounce his last name.
Ulbricht
asked about it.
Yeah.
Okay. The Silk Road case, I actually believe along the lines as Trump does and many libertarians. It was a trumped up case. It's not, and it was unjustly, is unjustly sentenced. And they really had to use some real novel legal theories to even reach a conviction on it. So yeah, I really don't have any problems with Trump's pardoning Ross.
Who's that sharp dressed man that just appeared on our screen?
Hey, Frank.
Well, I don't know about short dress. It's just a leather jacket. Oh, my hair is neat, and I'm not wearing a hat. So I guess that counts as something.
Dude, I'm
Yeah,
not
you
worried.
know, Frank.
Hey, listen, I'm on my way back home. I got about another 40-minute ride. I just wanted to stop in briefly and say good riddance to Joe Biden. Sorry I missed you guys last week. I had another late night working. If I get to the house in time, I'll jump in before the show is over. But if not, you all know our friend Alex that stops in time for time. I just want to let everybody know, send him a word of congratulations. As of this morning, he is the proud father of an 8-pound, 1-ounce baby boy named William Alexander Payne, born today. So he missed the inauguration by 1 day, but he made his arrival. We sent him our best wishes this morning. He says hello. You might see him in the comment section later on, but before I log out real quick, I just wanted to put that out there real quick. Everybody say congrats to Alexander. If I get back to the house in time, if you guys haven't covered all of the Biden pardons, I want to cover some of that constitutionally speaking, because I've been doing some reading too. So I'll catch you guys when I get back to the house.
Okay.
Okay.
Remember, Frank, it's not you that I'm worried about driving. It's the other people because they don't know how to drive in snow. 1 inch of snow. Oh my God, it's a disaster. No, it's not. So Ulbricht, not exactly the best person in the world. He was, as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, he did commit crimes. Now, as I understand it, he was punished. His punishment was a violation of the 8th Amendment. It was cruel and unusual. He got 2 life sentences.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't cause anyone to. He didn't directly cause anyone, or he didn't request anyone to be killed, as far as I am aware. So why is he getting essentially what would be the death penalty? That was cruel and unusual. 25 years, 50 years. Okay. That would make sense. But the way they went around getting him in there, it's kind of the same way that they went after Trump, where it was like, oh, look, see, we have 34 charges for one crime that we're not going to actually charge that one underlying crime, but we'll charge the other 34 we just made up. Yeah, it was very much something like that for him as well. So not the nicest guy. I know a lot of my libertarian friends out there were very happy about this. Larry Sharp, I know, was talking about it recently, and he and I were arguing about it. I know they're all very, super happy about it. I'm glad for them. They think this is part of what Trump promised them. And the one thing I can say about it is another example of Donald Trump. His first term, about 75% of everything he promised the American people, he did. Right now, he is barnstorming his way through all the promises that he made on the campaign trail for the last 4 years, and he's doing everything he said he was going to do. He is being held accountable for being a servant of the public and doing what he said and what people voted for. I think that's a great thing.
Well, like I said, with Russ, I do think it was a massive miscarriage of justice. Do I agree with his website? Absolutely not. Do I agree with what he did? Absolutely not. Do I think it was criminal? That is debatable at best. And you would actually, in order to convict him, you would actually need to prove that he had direct involvement in the things that he was ultimately convicted of. Part of it was overdose deaths of, I think it was 18 people that had bought drugs through that site. Okay.
Yeah, that's tenuous.
He didn't sell them those drugs.
No. That was a tenuous overreach to try and connect. Like I said, it's the same thing they did with Trump. It's a very tenuous connection to the underlying crime.
Okay. And honestly, if you're going to have something like the internet, you are going to have things like that. You're going to have websites like that. You're going to have websites that are far worse than that. Okay. That is a part of freedom. That is a part of free speech. Okay. Freedom isn't safe.
But to go one step further, the Silk Road is actually more like a platform for distribution, much in the same way that Amazon was or is. Silk Road was meant to be a marketplace on the internet that you could freely sell or buy using whatever means you had at your disposal, trade, barter,
Same
whatever.
thing with eBay.
Right. So Article 230 should have applied to that site because it was a platform. It was not meant to be, it's not him running a business necessarily. It's him providing a space for commerce.
And they're trying to say that because he got commissions,
right,
from the illicit activity, that makes him culpable also.
That's eBay. Literally, that's eBay. They take a commission on things that are sold on their platform. They don't know if those items are stolen or not. They don't ask.
Yep.
So eBay, literally under the same terms, someone could be committing a crime on eBay, selling stolen goods. eBay is taking a commission off of that stolen property being sold. Would they then
be culpable for the theft of those items?
Yeah.
Right.
If we're establishing this is the rule, someone better go to the board of eBay and arrest them all right now.
Right. The difference is that Ulbricht was one guy running the platform. So he was able to be targeted because he isn't a group. They had some place to place the blame, and then not only did they place the blame, they unconstitutionally rammed him into 2 life sentences. That's the injustice.
Yeah.
You want to try and make a case for the fact that he set up a platform and maybe did some dodgy things by accepting money from cartels or whatever. All right. Prove that he was working with the cartels directly.
Yeah.
But they couldn't.
No, because everything was done via
Right.
untraceable means.
Right. And the other reason, the other thing I think they got him on was tax evasion charges.
Yeah.
Because there was no taxes, federal or state, being charged for these transactions. It was a truly free market. And we
Wasn't
know
required at the time. At
Right.
the time of the charges, taxes weren't required.
for internet
for a long
purchases,
time.
right? Yeah.
So,
So-
that's not a fair charge either.
No. So, I mean, in the long run, what this Ross Ulbricht's case really highlights is, once again, government wasn't getting a cut. They didn't mandate a cut at the time, but they weren't getting their cut. And so they went after a guy that was merely enterprising. Unless you can really prove some sort of crime to vilify him, which they couldn't. at the
And
time.
his direct involvement in that crime.
Right. Which, again, they couldn't. So, it's good. It's good that he was pardoned. And
I'm okay with it.
And it's low hanging, as one person described it, it's low hanging fruit.
Well,
Because
it's like
It's an easy
it would
problem.
almost be like this too. Okay, if you are a landlord and
Yeah.
you have a rental property, and somebody is selling drugs out of that property,
Right.
okay, are you also a drug dealer then at that point?
I wouldn't think so.
According to the precedent that they set,
Yes,
Yes.
you would be.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
If you're aware of what's
Is
going on.
based
with the
on
property.
this precedent, then the landlord of that property, regardless
Well,
of
if
his
this
involvement,
is the precedent they have set, then every mayor, every police chief, every prosecutor, every governor should be arrested under these terms and convicted for all the illegals they have allowed to harm people in their states.
well, you wouldn't get them under the same thing for Ross, but that's why I thought it was real interesting. Trump activated a very, very old law, the 1798 Alien Enemies Act,
Yeah.
which I guarantee you, no one, including professors in law school, no one knew what this was. Everyone had to look it up afterwards because nobody knew what it was. And I did look it up, of course.
Outside of the most ardent of constitutional scholars,
I
no
don't
one
even
would
think
know
they
it.
knew about it
No one's
until
gonna know
he
something
mentioned it.
that
No
ain't
one knew what this
exactus.
thing was. Everyone had to look it up. It was so old and so very, very specific. But this is the means now, because he cited active law that has never been changed, never been removed from the books, which does give him the right to go after organizations like gangs and terrorist groups like the cartels, which are now terrorist groups, Hamas terrorist groups. He can now remove those individuals. This is part of the mass deportations.
Right.
And again, it goes back to, let's see, Hochul or Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, if they say, no, we're not going to let you get these alien enemies, which is long-standing, hundreds of years old law of the United States, now he can go and arrest them. That's what the AG is for. So
Yep.
that's how they, while they couldn't do the same thing they did to Ross, they have actual stronger law and precedent to stand on to get these people, which means America is going to be better.
Ultimately,
But-
it will be better.
By the way, folks, you can look that up. Go to Cornell Law School and just type in 1798 Alien Enemies Act, and you'll be able to see. It also comes from the Library of Congress, and either one will show you the exact law so you can see it for yourself.
Have any of you guys pulled up whitehouse.gov lately?
Yep, I saw it.
Did you see the video that comes up before?
No, I saw it when they first
No.
during the
First-
transition.
You first go to whitehouse.gov, a video comes up.
That's no.
Very patriotic video.
Must have been added yesterday because on Monday it wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm watching
and-
it now. Actually, I'll go ahead and put it up.
Yeah, because it wasn't there Monday, and I was going through Monday as Trump was.
Yeah, somebody was
Signing
talking.
the
Somebody on my Facebook feed was talking about a couple of the. Of course, it's the leftist ideology of a couple of the EOs he passed, and it was like, well, I don't remember that one. So I went to
I'll have to go back to it.
the site to go see what was up, and that video came up, and I was like, oh my God, I love this even more than what they showed, just we're back.
Right. There was one of the guys that tends to comment in Voss's streams posted on X today sometime about the executive order to get rid of diversity and inclusion in federal bureaucracy.
Yes.
And he said, well, today Trump reneged, or Trump got rid of the executive order from Ford.
Rescind.
No, I'm sorry, rescinded the executive order by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965
One of them.
to get rid of the third under Section 3, Addendum 3, or Paragraph 3, the diversity, inclusion, and equity portion of that executive order that was added, and I think it was 2011. No, I'll have to look again. It was
probably about 2016, I would think.
Yeah.
2015, excuse me.
But anyway, he said like the whole executive order is gone, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, you should probably look deeper than just the overall executive order and actually look at that third paragraph a little more closely, because that third paragraph is what's been hamstringing the United States for the last 20 years. It's not if you're going to do, like they argued in the Supreme Court recently, and they were talking about civil rights. Most of our civil rights legislation is based on immutable characteristics and the discrimination of those immutable characteristics. When you started adding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you start adding these nebulous, ever-changing definitions of characteristics of people to try and prevent discrimination, by their very nature, because they are nebulous and ever-changing, they cannot be immutable and therefore are not civil rights.
Because they are mutable, they are not
Right.
inalienable rights because they can be separated.
Well,
Right.
I think the biggest thing that people fail to understand about affirmative action and DEI, you sit there and say that you make these and you implement them so that people aren't biased against. But what do you think these laws have actually done? They've biased people.
Right. They've created bias.
They've created racism.
Yeah.
It literally, I mean, like Joy Reid has created a career out of DEI. And so has Al Sharpton, Patrice Cullors, Kendi,
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
There's quite a huge number, Sean King. These are individuals that have made a career out of race baiting and trying to definitely indoctrinate our kids in schools and outside of them and to promote this hyper racist ideology. I mean, just think of safe spaces, which they've been trying to get into businesses and trying to push that out there as part of the whole DEI intersectional movement, are these safe spaces. That's a restricted space, often in public areas like a college that's public. And they're trying to install these. They're segregationist.
Yeah.
They have been pushing
Well,
for
that's just
segregation.
it. Okay. And let's look at the Democrat Party through history. Democrat Party is the one that pushed for segregation to begin with.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
Okay. And they are pushing for it today.
and people fail.
As a racist policy then, it's a racist policy today.
Yes.
And people fail to understand that when it came to civil rights on several different occasions, like to end slavery, the Act of 64, that not one damn Democrat voted for it. But they're the party of the oppressed.
Yeah.
Well, because they have really good propaganda. They've got all these stars that if you pay them enough money, like Beyonce, like Oprah, like many others, if you pay them enough money, they will be happy to jump on your bandwagon and tell people that you're the greatest thing ever, even when they don't know anything about the politics themselves, even when they don't care. I mean, if you paid me $1 million, like Oprah, like Beyonce, like Al Sharpton, he actually got $500,000. Then yeah, I'd probably go. I'd have to seriously consider whether or not I'd say Democrats are not that bad. $500,000, yeah, for 30 seconds, that's a tough one. But let me step back for a second. I just want to mention something because we're a little more than an hour in, folks. We have tripped over so many trigger words, and I'm not talking about for Harvard. I don't care if they're triggered, go for it. But I'm talking about for Google, which is a monopoly, as determined by the courts, and their subsidiary, YouTube. They have key trigger words which we have used throughout this entire show, which means that we get suppressed. We get beat down. They don't want anyone to see this. They don't want to have this conversation. They don't want you to know your rights. They don't want you to express the First Amendment, free speech, to say, hey, this is what I think about that. This is what I want to know about that. This is how I want to be involved in my government. They don't want you to do any of those things. So they're suppressing us. Please help us fight that. Like, share, subscribe, especially subscribe. It is critical. This is the time that right now, as we are seeing all these changes, this is the time that we get to stand up before they find a new way to try and give us an excuse why they need to suppress us yet again.
Right.
Please
Well,
take
here,
that. Just a moment. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll suppress us some more now. How about that? I think one of my favorite ones that he passed this week was there are only two genders.
Yes.
And the trans community came out. He's canceling us. He's this. He's that. No, nobody has canceled you. Go live your life. Be who you're going to be. Just stop shoving it down our throats.
Well, I love this. It's like, oh my God, there's two genders like there has always been. And the trans community, the 1 million other sexual preferences out there, for forever, up until 2 years ago, they were living their life and no one stopped them. And now they can live their life.
Here's my thing.
No one's stopping them.
Okay. Originally, the gay movement, the gay and lesbian movement, was just about being treated fairly. It
like everyone else. Yeah.
And the right to marry.
Special rights.
And the right to marry.
Well, like everyone else.
That is being treated equally. Okay, that's all it is.
We didn't have our lifestyle down
the current movement is literally all about special treatment.
Yeah, the modern political movement, especially more so as we go to trans.
It is a movement to literally give them special favor, and that's literally all DEI is, as well. It's not about equality. It's not even about equity. It is about giving certain classes of people special treatment.
I disagree about the definition of equity because the functional modern, not the original definition, but the functional political definition of equity right now is to eternally divide every group into smaller subgroups and to have those groups compete with each other in terms of victimhood to get the biggest reward. The biggest victim gets the biggest reward. So, as an example, I'm black, so I have higher victimhood than Mike or Dow. So
Yeah,
I
we've got the
win.
lowest victimhood.
Yeah, I get
beat
so
ya.
much stuff, but
I'm
Jan
female
beats all of
and
us.
I'm like gay.
Yes, but that makes you even better than me. So
That's
Jan
why I
wins
said I beat
everything. I mean, it's stupid. It has nothing to do with the intrinsic value of any of us, nor the equality of each of us in America. This sounds like something you would hear in North Korea. It sounds like something that you would hear in the old Soviet Union or the CCP. This is something that you would hear from dictators, justifying why their people are the master people and everyone else are lesser people.
Yeah.
Because it's that same bias, just different words describing that bias. So I'm happy. And if it's as simple as just saying, okay, there have throughout all of mankind been two genders. Scientifically, there's two genders. And if you want to really get into it, two genders, and anyone who doesn't fall into that, you are an aberration of humanity. That is the scientific definition. You're abnormal. So there's two genders and abnormalities. And life goes on. And if you don't like it, I got a neat idea. Go anywhere else in the world. You will not get as much freedom nor as much respect anywhere else in the world that you get here.
Yeah,
That's it.
I think the other issue is that once these groups started getting political power, they realized that they weren't a majority of people, and that in order to grow their numbers, they can't just reproduce;
No.
they have to convert. They're
Yeah.
a self-defeating proposition. So unless you can get new blood to perpetuate your lifestyle, you're not going to be able to continue gaining power or exerting authority, because eventually you're just going to die out.
Yes.
So they have to go after the children. They have to indoctrinate the children, because if something like, especially in the trans movement, if it was something that was so natural that it just occurred in nature of its own, they would continue to have in perpetuity reproduction to the point where they could sustain themselves, but they can't.
No, it would be okay. This sounds unpleasant. And I'm sorry if it sounds unpleasant to people, but what you're describing is there is historically 0.5% of the population is trans. 0.5% of the entire population is trans. And of that group, 45% self-delete within 5 years because they're wrong. That's the data. That's the empirical data. I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm not making a personal judgment. That's just the numbers that we have. So that number is consistent. That's a deviation that keeps happening. These are numbers that have been tracked since about the late 60s, 70s going forward. So we see that this is a consistent trend. Call it a recessive gene that keeps popping up in humanity. It's always about 0.5% of the population. But that it doesn't grow because they're not reproducing, because they can't. But at the same time, it's not disappearing. It's a steady, consistent genetic event at 0.5% of the population. The problem, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people saying that, okay, you're part of that happen. Fantastic. And that doesn't mean you don't get to vote. That doesn't mean you don't have, you can run for elected office. You can do anything that you want to do. Fantastic.
You still have unalienable rights, just like every other human being.
Absolutely. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that you get to be hired by the LA Fire Department and turn around and tell everyone, I got this job. Well, it's not exactly the same thing as the LA Fire Department, but you can't turn around and then say, I have to be treated special. I have to get a job I'm not qualified for, just because I'm part of that 0.5%.
And I
I'm
want to
sorry,
see
no.
representation. I want to see my representation of my people increase.
Yeah,
That you got to be able to
qualified.
carry.
You're qualified. That's
Yeah,
it.
you got to be able to carry out unconscious human beings from a place of danger. If you can't do that, then you should not be a first responder.
Yes.
Period. Period.
Yeah, because no one cares. But I look like you. I don't care. Get me out the building. It's burning. I
Right.
don't want to burn. I don't care what you look like.
And don't tell me I accidentally put myself in a compromising position and boy was I stupid. I'm not going to carry you out.
That's
What?
your job. It's
What?
called a fire.
Okay. So these numbers are varying. As a Gallup News lists LGBTQ plus identification in the U.S. at 7.6%. Transgender specifically is less than 2%, about 1.6.
That's from
after being very popular in the media, being promoted in our schools, news, entertainment. That is a 300% increase that happened within the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it's 0.5%. So that's what you see when you get a fad. It becomes very popular. There's an explosion. The problem with this is if we are wrong, and historically the data tells us we're wrong by 300%, what happens to those people when they find out their life isn't going to be magically better? That everyone isn't going to try and be their friend. Everyone isn't trying to be their lover, that they're not magically going to be smarter or better or get anything different, that they're still going to be living the same lives they were living before, which, again, should not be discriminated against. I'm not saying they should have a worse life than anyone.
Right.
I'm saying they're not going to be elevated, which is what they've been promised.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us would agree with that.
Yeah.
Right?
You want to be a teacher? Then teach.
Great.
But you don't have
No
to teach about yourself. No teacher should be teaching about themselves, hetero
Correct.
or otherwise.
Correct.
You should be teaching the material of your subject. You should be teaching history, math, science. Those are the things that you should be teaching, not what you do in the bedroom, not how you go and socialize on a Saturday. Those are not your...
This actually happens to be my
Thanks.
brother that has this question.
Can I answer first? Since I'm the alternative lifestyle in the group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. I think no trans. If you're gay, lesbian, bi, for all means, go serve in the military. As long as you're not pushing your life on somebody else. Trans, no, because a man who has become a woman has no right to be housed with women in their showers or anything else like that.
Unless you want to go Starship Trooper style.
That's fine. That's why it's a movie. I can now. Mike may have a slightly different opinion than me. We're both Marines, so I'll give my thought on that. First of all, I don't want anyone in the military, like same thing as fire department, same thing as police department. If you can't do the job, then you don't go in. So if you can't make the minimum standard, you don't get the job. I don't care who you are. So women get to have to qualify by the same minimum standard as a man. If you can't run as fast as me, carry as much as me, do the job as well as me when I was 20, then you don't, or well, actually when I was 18, no, you don't get to be part of the military. Separate of that. So you've now qualified. You can do the minimum standard. Fantastic. I'm happy to have everyone in there. Here's the exception. Trans are exceptions. to maintain their lifestyle, to be able to do the things everyone else does, requires special treatment to some degree. The military, there is no special treatment. Every private is the same as every other private. They get all of the same things. We all get camo. We all get to sleep in a bunk. We all get to trudge around and get beat upon. Same, you go up in the rank, you get a couple of more perks, plus a lot more responsibility. Everyone is treated the same. There is no special. If you have trans, you must be special. That's not the military. That's not the function of the military. That's not the purpose of the military. And it also defeats a minimum standard.
Right.
Because now you have a special exclusion. That doesn't belong in any military. It destroys the military and the capability of the military. Sorry, no. So I kind of agree with you, Jan. Slightly different reason, but yeah. No trans in the military.
No, my thoughts actually very simple. It is not good for the good order and discipline of the military.
That's a better way of saying it. That's a shorter way of saying it.
Extremely disruptive
Yeah.
of the good order and discipline of the military.
Yeah.
Not only that, to maintain that kind of lifestyle, in many cases, if you have gone as far as you need to with hormones and surgery, you're going to require special attention that you may not be able to achieve in the field, and you have to be able to act as a unit.
Trans members of the military are not able to be deployed. Okay, there is no other classification of people in the military that I'm aware of that have an exemption on deployments, except for trans people. And the reason why they are not able to be deployed is number one, acceptance in other nations, and number two, because of the amount of specialized care that they require. If they are in an area that doesn't have that specialized care, they actually put their health at risk.
Yeah. Well, user has been banned has a good point on this.
Okay, yeah, maybe pregnant women as well.
Yeah, we don't put pregnant women on the front lines, and pretty much pregnant women aren't in the military.
But that's temporary.
Yeah,
okay, trans, as far as they say, is permanent.
I do recall back in, I think it was 1994, when the Air Force came out with their maternity jumpers.
Oh God, I saw that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The Air Force had a maternity jumper for female pilots that were carrying.
So you could be pregnant, flying a plane at Mach 2 with 5 Gs, and you have a maternity suit on, so your baby can go through the 5G turns as well. That was just stupid.
So
like, that baby's going to come out loving roller coasters.
Yeah,
I hope.
yeah. So what did you guys think overall about his inaugural speech? I actually loved.
unfortunately, I still have yet to see it.
I thought it was a great, great, great speech. In fact, I would put it up there with JFK's speech.
Okay. I thought it was a good speech. Definitely not as good as JFK's speech. It was very I don't mind that it was political, because most of them usually are. It was very barbed. Not mind you. And I was talking about it the other day. Actually, I was on with Larry about it. It was Trump was being very nice for President Trump. I mean, he's usually bombastic and brimstone, and he just goes at his enemies. So he was being, relative to himself, nice. Relative to other presidents, he was just being crushing, and it was embarrassing. I wasn't so upset with that. There was a couple of things he mentioned in the speech and a couple of things he didn't mention in the speech that I thought were a little off. So I'd give him like an A- overall. it was a little bit more aggressive than the pomp and circumstance would that we normally get with that kind of pomp and circumstance. Couple of things he left out, couple of things I didn't quite agree with. So, like I said, about a minus in my point.
Yeah.
Dal.
I basically caught the highlights. I wasn't able to watch the entire inaugural speech, but I did like the tone. No,
I watched it 3 times. I watched it 3 times.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get that far yet.
Well, it's only about actually the speech itself is about 25, 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
The rest of the pomp I wasn't really paying attention to, but once he started speaking,
his speech for the most part, what I did catch of it in between driving, because I normally am able to only listen to it when I'm driving, is very good. And I think it definitely reflects the mandate that he was given. And he acknowledges that it's the people that gave him that mandate. Like he's saying to us, this is your opportunity to get back control over your government. I am just here as a vessel for you. I will do as you've asked me to do to the best of my ability. And I want you to make sure that you retain the power to govern yourselves, which is good. That's what we wanted. And I hope that he keeps to that. And the only way he's going to keep to that is if we as the people continuously ride him to do so. And then after that, who knows? I mean, we have 2 years to really do what Dan Bongino calls total personnel warfare, which is basically to get rid of everybody that stood in the way of normalcy and actual American governance. And then after that, we have to see where it goes in the states. We have to take a look at our state governments now and apply pressure where the pressure is needed to actually get our states to fall in line with the American people. Trump will do what he can in the federal government, but he's not the magic bullet. We are. And the only way that our representatives are ever going to listen to us is if we show up at their places of work and we say, you work for us. Period. Don't give yourself raises. Don't ask for more money. Cut your spending. Stop taking from me and actually do your jobs instead of getting these special vacations and going off and running after special causes because they don't help the American people. You will work for us. Period.
There's what the American people think.
Yeah.
54% approval rating right now.
That's the highest, I think, for any.
That's breaking records.
Yeah.
Yeah, 54 is great. I think what's the most important thing, I don't think the approval rating is the most important thing. The one thing that I think is the most important and is why we're seeing so much tension from the left, whether it's on news media or in politics, Trump is unfettered. He has an unfettered ability right now to serve the public. Unlike most presidents, he has a second term. He is a billionaire. He's old. His kids are already set. All the things that many politicians are afraid of, scandal, loss of income, loss of prestige, no ability to work afterwards, some counterproductive thing happening to their families because of a stigma or because of bias. All of these factors that very often affect politicians don't affect Trump. He's old, he's rich, his kids are set, he's made his career, he's made his name, his kids are independently doing well themselves.
And his money is made outside of government.
And he doesn't have to worry about raising more money or running for an election again. He's already done. He's term limit out. All he has to do is go for his agenda. Make sure it's the most effective, efficient agenda that can be done.
Now, I want to go back to what we discussed last week on this. Okay. the president only has a certain amount of authority constitutionally.
Mhm.
Most of this stuff actually needs to be done and is required constitutionally to be done by the Congress. And folks, we need to quit putting so much power in the president's hands.
Right.
And we need to start looking at the people that we elect to the House and the Senate. Okay. Those are the people that are actually supposed to be doing this stuff. And when they're not doing their jobs, it makes everything run a lot rougher.
Well, Trump is trying to get there. I mean, look at his administration. He's put his team together, record time, with very specific individuals with very targeted objectives. And they, for the most part, agree with him. And more importantly, they agree on their part of what he's doing. So he is very much like a business. I mean, RFK is there for Maha. RFK loves Maha. Trump's not looking for him to try and help with international politics.
Correct.
Because he doesn't agree with the international politics of RFK, nor do I.
Right.
And that's a good thing. But he absolutely agrees. Maha, yes, he's a great man for that.
Actually, I do want to talk about this, and I also want to touch on it constitutionally.
What's that?
Before we run out of time. Okay, so when it comes to birthright citizenship, aren't foreigners under the jurisdiction of the nation that they came from until they become a citizen?
Yes.
Okay. Birthright citizenship is actually, and we'll bring it up under the Constitution, so let me get to that.
Well, birthright
Which is
citizenship
under
was
the
added
14th
to the
Amendment.
Constitution after the Civil War and slavery ended, so that all the ex-slaves could be citizens, so that they'd be part of the U.S. in the way that they should have been.
It was a short end.
That has nothing to do with an illegal alien coming over and dropping out a baby and saying, "Oh, U.S. citizen, now give me welfare and Social Security and all the other benefits."
Okay, let's actually read this from the Constitution. Okay. Okay, so Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which means U.S. sovereign soil abroad, okay, ships, embassies, etc., are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Okay, so birthright citizenship. So it says all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Okay. There's nothing there that says that they are citizens of the United States. It doesn't say that they must reside in the United States.
Right.
Okay. So if their parents are foreign nationals, the child would still be a citizen of the United States, but they are not required to live in the United States. And as such, they can live with their parents in whichever nation that their parents come from.
Right. But they still retain their citizenship.
Yes. And
The child
when they
does.
become of age,
Right. They can participate as a full citizen
or
of
are
the United States.
emancipated, or become wards of whatever, then they can come here as a citizen of the United States.
Right.
Okay. But there's nothing that says we must give their parents entrance into the United States.
Right.
Yeah, but the expectation is, quite simply, the expectation is if the child is a citizen, then the parents will be extended the opportunity to stay with that child in America because no one wants to, they're pulling on the heartstrings. We're not
I
going to
know they're
separate the
trying to.
family.
Okay.
Huh?
But like I said, there's nothing that requires that child to remain in the United States.
Yes, if you're logically thinking it through. But the left doesn't want you to think of it in logic. They want you to think of it in emotion,
Right.
which is why they
Okay.
say we
That
can't.
child can remain with his family in Algeria.
Yeah, but they don't look at how they word it. I'm not disputing you, Mike. I'm not saying you're wrong. I agree with you. Take the kid, go back to wherever you came from. The kid can come back at 18 whenever they want. We're not stopping the citizen from being a citizen. They can exercise their rights whenever they want to.
Mm-hmm.
The parents don't gain additional rights or
Right.
benefits. And realistically, we're talking about benefits just because their kid's a citizen.
Right.
That's what the left wants to do. But again, why are they doing that? Because they want an open path to citizenship to get a basically a second class citizen who is shackled to the Democratic Party. That's why the Democrats are for this. That's why the left is for this. The progressives. I do agree with Donald Trump. I do think, and I think you can, as simply as I did a video on this about a month ago. It would take about 3 words, literally 2 to 3 words, added to the first section 1 of the 14th Amendment, and restrict birthright citizenship just to American citizens. I think we should, because there's an entire
That would
industry.
require a new amendment to be added to the Constitution,
I have no problem
which
with
requires it to go through the process.
that. And I have no problem with that. I want
Okay, and
that.
I don't have a problem with it either. Okay, because that's the way our Constitution is designed. But these Democrats that are claiming that Trump is changing the Constitution, really, he's not. Okay, because he's not saying that they. Well, actually, he did say that they weren't citizens. That he's ending birthright citizenship.
He went the wrong way. I think he went the wrong way. We need to change the amendment itself.
Yeah.
And in changing the amendment, we strip away foreign rights that foreigners coming into America cannot give.
There
birth
actually
to a
doesn't
citizen.
need to be any changes made. You can still allow for birthright citizenship.
But you just have to be more stringent in how you apply the law.
But
Exactly.
That's all.
Yeah, but that's how we get the abusive system. We get the abusive system we have now.
Right.
Remove that.
So if you go through the amendment process and you add any American born of an American citizen retains, like, achieves citizenship by birth, then you have that limiting factor in there, so that no matter where, as long as one of the parents is an American, their birthright of being an American follows with that parent.
Yes. I think you saw my video. It's called by a citizen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And
Those are
that's
the 3 words.
that would be the only change that you would need to make to limit it, so that it would keep foreign parents from trying to do this whole anchor baby situation where they go and try to achieve a second class citizenship, because only the child, technically under the current law, only the child retains the citizenship.
Right.
Right. And we don't like the idea of splitting up families, but why does that family have to remain in the United States? They don't.
And that's my point.
That's the problem, is that we want the families to stay together, but we also want that child who is an American citizen not to have to grow up away from the country of its birth and be deprived of the secured
Well,
free
technically,
exercise
they
of their
have dual
inalienable rights.
citizenship.
Technically, yes, but I'm just saying that
They have
that is the
citizenship from the parents' origin, and they have citizenship in the United States.
that's the crux of the argument, though, is that what they're saying is the child is an American, therefore we need to extend benefits to the parents to raise the child so that the state doesn't become liable for the raising of that child who has to stay here as an American while their parents go home. And I'm saying just be stringent with the law and say that the child has free access once they're emancipated or once they're the age of majority to return to the United States as a full citizen and doesn't have to go through the same process as, say, people of foreign descent that are not citizens.
I understand your point, Dow,
Right.
but that's how, and I don't disagree with your logic. It's that we've seen the left has pulled on heartstrings
Right.
to abuse that.
And
Exactly what you're saying, because that's
Right.
what it was initially. And we can't go by a system where people, because of sentimentality and emotional manipulation, are going to eventually come back to the situation we have right now.
right.
Remove that option, I think, is the best answer.
And the reason we would have to change the law is because of the subversion of interpretation of the law.
Yes. So
It's the same argument for term limits. Why do we need term limits if the people actually vote the way they're supposed to? Well, we wouldn't. If people would actually primary out the bad people instead of, not re-electing the 93% back into the office over and over again, we wouldn't need term limits. But in the absence of active citizenry doing their own governance, taking control of their own governance, you make a law. That's the whole point of having the term limit argument to create term limits for these different positions, is because there is an absence of active citizenry in their own governance.
and there are those who abuse the lack of that active participation by citizens. So it's the same argument.
Yeah,
and I know we agree, but it's just different ways, and it can be worded a lot of different ways. It comes to the same point. So, and like I said, like you said, Mike, and we agree, I don't mind. Trump can't do it. It's not a presidential action. It's not an
he
executive
can't do it
order.
by executive order. We have to do it.
It like I said, it would require a constitutional amendment to be a new amendment to be added that would change the 14th Amendment, Section 1.
And the point is actually more to the audience rather than the discussion here and to all of us. We understand that it would take an amendment in the absence of governance of ourselves. But it's on you folks in the audience to determine and choose whether you want to have a law to restrict this, or if you just want to do your due diligence and actually enforce the law as it is.
Okay, Grace says conservatives need to play the long game and amend the Constitution.
Yes.
Here's the issue with that. I would love that. Okay, I'm all for that. I'm all for any amendment, okay, provided it goes through the proper process.
Right.
And that process is defined in Article 5 of the Constitution. And that requires that amendments either be put forth by Congress by 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate, and then ratified by 3/4 of the states.
Right.
Or that they be put forth by a convention of states and then ratified by 3/4 of the states.
Right.
Either way, I'm game for those to be put forth. But mind you, a convention of states is what led to our current Constitution when they obliterated the Articles of Confederation, which was the initial document setting up our government at the federal level. So, a convention of states, we do run the risk of having a completely new constitution being instituted. If it goes through the House and the Senate process, that becomes far less likely. Okay, because then the states are only working on that specific amendment. They're not looking at the entire Constitution, and they don't have the power to go after the entire Constitution at that point.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, that's Jim Barrett makes that point as well. Okay. And that's exactly the point that I was just making, Jim, is a constitutional convention opens up the entire Constitution. An amendment passed through the House and Senate is limited to that specific amendment.
I know we only got a few minutes left. Frank's not here. I was going to ask him, but Marshall, how'd the Gundys go?
We didn't get anywhere.
Did anybody affiliated with us win anything?
That I do not know. Honestly, I haven't seen who won. I actually should look that up. But no, we didn't get many votes, unfortunately.
That's kind of sad.
But hey, we were nominated, and that in and of itself is a pretty big honor. But we're up against some pretty heavy hitters.
Oh no, I totally get that. But you think with the five of us and the people that follow us, and then the people that follow the channel as well, I mean, you think it would have been more votes?
Yeah. No, we didn't get very many votes at all. But it is what it is. Okay. And I mean, things happen. So that's about all I got to say on it. I would like to have seen more votes. I will, and so forth. But hey, we did make it as a nominee, and that in and of itself is a huge honor.
There's always next year, right?
I'm happy with that. Okay, it means that we are starting to be recognized for what we're doing.
Well, that's why it's even more important to like us, subscribe to us, share us.
Mm-hmm.
Get
Yeah,
us
the
out
more
there.
we can get the word out to people, the more of an impact we can actually have. And that's where we need our audience's help. Let people know about us. Let people know. Send out our episodes and so forth. Okay, because we can't do this alone. We simply can't. We're doing everything that we can. So I appreciate it. Okay, and I appreciate everybody's support. I appreciate our audience that show up and the people that are participating in our chat. There has been some great comments in the chat tonight. I haven't been as diligent with getting them popped up like we normally do, but there have been some great comments, and I appreciate all of it. And I appreciate people challenging us on our positions.
And I think
that this. And if you don't understand where we stand on a certain position, ask, like Jim Barrett did, and so forth. Okay, because that is one way to see where we actually do stand on a particular issue or whatever. And maybe we align, maybe we don't. But it opens up dialogue. It opens up the conversation. And to me, that's needed more importantly in the United States than anything else right now.
I think one thing we're going to see during this whole period of the next 4 years is that we're going to have a lot more conversations, and people are going to be more willing to be open with those conversations than they were previously, because we're at a point now where we have to discuss these things. We can't just keep going, well, maybe in another 4 years it'll disappear and we're going to we're gonna, it'll all be swept aside, and history will eventually look back on this time and just think we were really weird. No, we have to take an active grasp because we're living history as of this moment. This is extremely historic. This is the time when we need to have these discussions, because the next 4 to 8 years, the next 20 years will be a determining factor in whether America sinks or swims. And a lot of times we get these periods that are called inflection points in history. And any student of history will tell you there are certain periods where a forward movement of humanity comes, and there's a choice that we make as an entire species. Americans are of a distinctly odd breed, because many of the people that left Europe, many of the people that left other countries to come to this country and found it, were people that held ideas that were unpopular in the places where they lived. The idea of individual rights, the individual unalienable freedoms, the freedom to exercise these uninfringed by governing bodies. These are unique experiment. This is a unique experiment in the history of the world. And if we want this experiment to continue with any sort of success, we have to have these discussions now. We cannot wait. It's almost as important as it was when our forefathers had these discussions at the First Continental Congress. This is our time.
Here's the thing: the American experiment, or what's classified as the American experiment, has been going on for nearly 250 years. Okay, next year is 250 years since the Revolution.
Yep.
And we need to not only look at what's going on today, but we do need to look back at our founding era and realize just what the founding era and the founding generation was trying to do for us as a nation and for us as a people. We literally set up the first government of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Nowhere in history had there ever been. They took bits and pieces from other parts of history, but this is the first government that was purely self-governance.
Right. And now would be a good time to do that because of the time period. I remember, I think it wasn't too long before the election, Trump had talked about his plans for using this entire year to elevate the history of the United States and put it before the people, having a year-long celebration from, I think it's, what did he say, July 4th of this year to July 4th of next year?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be, wall-to-wall American history year. It's going to be a year of American history, and he's going to have federal resources in play, going to people in private groups to negotiate the same, putting in effort to basically resurrect a study of American history and why we are so unique as a country.
And
I like that. I want that.
And over the next year, we're going to start focusing a lot more on our founding era history, because it is important, because that is what gave us our start. And we need to understand that's also what gave us our freedom and our liberties, and allows us to do a lot of what we are able to do today, even with the encroachments that our current government has upon the people. We need to understand that we are still the ones that are in charge. It's not the government that's in charge of us. We are in charge of the government. And it is our duty, our responsibility, our obligation to hold that government accountable at all levels.
Right.
Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. We're at 1:59, 1 hour and 59 minutes, and 51 seconds. So with that, we are here every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Folks, invite your friends, invite your neighbors, invite everybody you know, even if they're your enemy, invite them, because this is a good platform and good place that we can actually have just open, honest discussions about the issues that are facing America and how we get this country back to its foundational roots.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of people think that the founding generation was about basically oppressing certain classes and so forth, and that's not the truth. Okay, actually, many of the founding era people did not agree with slavery, and they actually thought slavery would abolish itself. Unfortunately, it didn't, and did lead to the Civil War. But that is what they were hoping for, is that having this system of government would eventually abolish the abomination of slavery. That was just part of it. Another part of it was to put the people in charge of the government instead of the government being in charge of people.
Because if you change the citizen subject dynamic, you don't have as much, there is not as much opportunity for tyranny to take root. And that was the biggest thing, trying to overthrow the tyranny of governance and place the power strictly in the hands of the people so that they could not be tyrannized.
Okay, but I'm going to bring it back to this point, and then I'm going to go ahead and sign this out. Folks, none of it matters if you refuse to be involved. Absolutely none of it. Okay, so get out there, do more than just go cast your ballot every other year. Get involved locally, get involved in how your community is governed, because that's where it starts. That's actually where our country started from, was how our communities were being governed.
Yep.
Okay, folks, we will see you next week. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Doll. Thank you, Jen. We appreciate everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Have a good night.